All right, so today we're going to talk about installing the Java development kit as well as IntelliJ, which is what we're going to use. So the development kit is on Oracle's site, and you want to download this Java development kit here. And you have to agree to their license, and depending on what environment you're running, you can run on all kinds of different things, Mac or Windows. There's a 64-bit and a 32-bit. So you download those programs and run them. I'm not going to do that here. And it will install the development kit in your C drive under Program Files and Java, and we'll use that in our IntelliJ. So that's how you do that. So let's start by creating a new project inside IntelliJ. And in IntelliJ, you're going to download from JetBrains.com, and you can select the defaults for all of their installation options as well. So I'm going to create a new Java Hello World program here. It's the very bottom of the samples gallery, and call it whatever you want. We're going to call this Hello for my project name, and I'm going to put it in a directory called Hello. And then the SDK that we want probably says nothing here. So we want to say new and select the JDK, the top one here, for setting up our project. So we select that, and it will ask you where that JDK is, and you're going to, of course mine already is selected, so I can't. That's interesting. Well, let me change that. Oh, here we go. There it comes back. Under C drive, under Program Files, this is the default where it installed the JDK. And we want the JDK 1.7 here, so we just select that folder. The JRE is the Java runtime environment that should be installed on your computer already. That allows you to run existing programs like IntelliJ, because IntelliJ is written in Java. So you need the runtime environment to be able to run IntelliJ. But in order to develop new programs, we have to use the JDK, Java Development Kit. So we select that folder, and it finds the right one for me here. All right? Then we say Finish. And if it doesn't exist, it'll create me the folder. Beautiful. And it, as with all JetBrains products, they have the tip of the day, so you can go through those. We're going to skip those. So the IntelliJ works a lot like RubyMine, PHP Storm. We have a project window on the left, and our main editor window here in the middle. So if we open up the source folder, this is the main program. This is the actual code that is open up here. So this is what it takes to run a Hello World. So that's what, 5-6 lines of code. So that's already printed for us. Let's run it, make sure everything's running and working correctly for us. And while that's running, let's talk about, and it came back with Hello World. It printed that to the console. That's what this line did here. So we can run the Java programs directly in IntelliJ, and we'll do that here. And as we progress, we'll add the Android development kit and build our Android applications all inside of IntelliJ. So Java is an interpreted language like Ruby. It's interpreted, so that means you have to have some type of a runtime environment on your computer in order to run Java applications. The one difference between Ruby and Java is that Java compiles the code into a byte code. So it compiles it into a byte code that then can be run on any Java environment. So once I compile the code, I can take it to a Mac and run it on the Mac side. Or I can take it to a Windows and it'll run that same compiled code. But again, you have to have the runtime environment in order to interpret those byte codes and instructions to do something. Because of that, because it's compiled, it's very strongly typed. It's a strongly typed language like C#, C++, C. So you can't do a lot of the fun things like you can do in Ruby. I like Ruby a lot because it's not strongly typed. So because of that, there are rules about you have to cast things, you have to convert things. This is very similar to C#. In order to convert an integer to a string and things like that, you have to do conversions explicitly in Java. There also are, if you look in your Java book, there are limits to the sizes of the variables. So we have integers, we have doubles, we have strings. There's limits to how big that number can be. So for instance, let's see if I find one here. Ding. If we use the keyword float, that's a 32-bit size. That's the largest number that we can have is a 32-bit number. If we use a double, then that's a 64-bit number. And we have integers. We have short integers. A short integer is 16 bits. Integer is 32 bits. A byte is how many bits, do you think? Do you remember your 149? 8. 8 bits in a byte. A Boolean doesn't really have a size. It's used differently. A character, how big do you think a character is? No, unfortunately, it's 2 bytes. It's 16 bits because it uses Unicode. Unicode instead of ASCII. Unicode allows us to represent more character sets in the world like Chinese, Mandarin, Japanese, that kind of thing. So it's more than just a single byte. All right, so very strongly typed.
These don't vary by platform, right?
No, they're guaranteed to be the same across the platform, supposedly. The problem with Java, when I first started with Java, it was touted to be write once, run everywhere, right? You write the code, compile it, you can run it on everything. The problem was it was write once, debug everywhere, because it did not work on every platform. They had some discrepancies and things just did not work. So it's not the end-all, be-all that it was touted to be. But it's the main platform that the Android devices use. It's all written in Java and compiled to their runtime environment that runs on their phone. So, all right. So let's play around with the language a little bit. This should look very similar to C# for you guys. We have to declare a main program, and we declare it as a class. It's also public, so that the main interpreter can run this. As opposed to a private class, which you'll be creating some other classes later. And we have to declare our method. So inside of our main class, we have a method called main as well, and it takes a single argument. What do you think args is here? Yeah, it's an argument. What type of argument? An array of strings. Very good. So a string is a multi-byte representation, and the square brackets behind it means that's an array. So it's an array of strings. So args would be a lot like a Ruby array of strings, but every element in that array is a full string. So this is used to pass arguments to the main program. So say I wanted to run this from a DOS prompt or something like that. I can type the name of the program and add strings after that to send configuration or whatever into the program. Not used very much in Java unless you're writing some scripts to manage your computer or something like that. They're used because the Android system takes care of that for us. We won't be using that at all for our programs. So the next thing is, in order to print something to the console, which is also not used very often, this is typically used for debugging purposes to see what's going on in my program. Because in the Android world, where do I send information? To the screen, right? Where I'm going to send it. I can't write to the console. I have to write to a text box or some element that's defined on the screen. A lot like C#, where you had a text box object and you could insert text into that text box. So very similar to C#, just not quite as drag and droppy. Before we get into this, I don't like this style of their options where I can insert anywhere. So under the options, this little wrench, I'm going to change some things. Under the editor, I'm going to unselect allow placement of caret after end of line. That just bugs me, so I'm going to fix that. Also, I don't like their code style default. So under code style, under Java, I'm going to make the tab size. The tab sizes get really large when you're indenting a lot of classes. So you're running off to the right of the page really fast. So I'm going to make my tab sizes 2, my indentation 2, and my continuation 4. So that looks a lot better. It's more compact, closer to the left edge. So I'm going to apply that. Say OK. And now to fix my code that's on the page, I'm going to select it, and we can go under Code and say Reformat Code. So there's no excuse to have misindented code. You know how that makes me feel, right? Your indentation has got to be right. So you can always reformat your code to work correctly. All right, so I want you to add a line to this that would print out your name after the word hello world. So print hello world and then your name at the end of that. All right, so let's copy and paste that. We can copy and paste that line and change this to whatever, Dave. And when we run it again, I'm going to see 2 lines, hello world and Dave. Now the reason I get 2 lines is because land in Ruby versus print in Ruby. There's 2 different ways. So if I change this one to just print and run it again, it puts it on the same line. The print line means put an end of line at the end of the string. That's all that means. All right? Yeah, that's because this one was a print line. Yeah, right. Yep. All right, so that's pretty simple, right? We can do string concatenation. It works the same in most languages. I can say, I can add a string together. So Dave plus Jones. It will concatenate those 2 together. So I run those guys. And it concatenates them, so that's beautiful. Any questions on any of this so far? No. Easy stuff, right? I can have a variable. So declaring a variable, I have to strong. So string, I can say name, and I can assign it right away to a string like Dave. Note also that I need to have semicolons after every statement. Every expression needs a semicolon. What languages is that similar to? PHP? What else? What did you say? C, any C language like JavaScript, C#, C++, C, all of those C ancestor languages. Let me pop. All right, I changed the size of the screen so you could see this better. Isn't that great? There we go. So I can also have other variables like an integer, so an int, and IntelliJ has some code IntelliSense with it. So I can say int count, and I can assign that a value as well in the same line that I'm declaring the variable. So typically we do that right up front, unless this is going to be given a variable that I read in from the keyboard or something. All right? So, right, unpause. There we go, unpaused. So I can define an integer. Now, I want you to, based on what you know so far, write a loop using a while statement, and the count that I have here with the languages that you already know, see if you can figure out what the while loop structure looks like. And I want you to print out these two lines 10 times, right? Whatever number you have, all right? So go ahead and try that. What? Yes, so we'll show you that. So I need a while loop, so IntelliSense lets me do that. If I hit tab while I'm typing it, WH tab, it automatically comes out and tries to do this. So while some Boolean expression, I'm going to say count, and the way I have it, I'm going to go down to 0. Then I need braces if I'm going to have multiple statements. And you need to indent these, right? So while my count is greater than 0, then I need something inside of my loop to change the Boolean expression, right? So I need to change my count. I can say count equals count minus 1. Or I can say count minus equals 1. Or I can say count minus minus, which is a JavaScript or C structure. This is called a post-decrement operator. It decrements the value of count and puts it back into count. So I'm going to go ahead and use that and comment these out. So while we're here, commenting is the same as C#, C++. 2 slashes comments out from that point to the end of the line. For a multi-line comment, I can use a /*. And to end a multi-line, I would do a /* at the end, a */ at the end. All right, so that's quickly commenting. So let's see if this works. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? All right. Any questions on that? That's a while loop. What's a while loop? Oh, geez. So we could also do a for loop. This is like JavaScript. For int I equals 0, I less than count, I plus plus. Use double braces around my something, so I'm going to just print hello world here. Cool. We'll just do it on one line. And then do I need to increment my counter inside of a for loop? Because I've already done it in these expressions. So this is a shortcut for a while loop. I have my initial expression, my Boolean expression, and my something that changes that Boolean expression. So you don't have to use it with integers like this. You can do all kinds of stuff inside of a for loop. All right. The one thing I don't like is I like my while loops and my for loops next to my parentheses, and I like parentheses on this side. But that's a personal preference. Right? So will this work? Ah, very good. So the problem is when I get to this line, what is count? 0. So it's going to say I equals 0, I less than 0. That's never going to be true. It skips this and goes on to the next. So to make this work right, what would I have to do?
Swap.
Reset my count. That would be the easiest. Count equals 10. Yeah, I could. Yeah, sure. But hard coding these is not a good idea. So, all right. So we can do while loops and for loops and fun stuff like that. Isn't that great? So, let's do a. How much time do we have? Well, I'm going to give you code to read in from the keyboard. There's 3 or 4 different ways to do it, and all 3 or 4 are not easy. Ruby, we used to just say count equals gets, right? .2i. Nice. Can't do that, so that's garbage. We have to. One of them is we have to create a new reader that reads from the console. Because Java really wasn't designed to read from the console that well. So we're going to call a new buffered reader. And we're going to call it just BR. So we're declaring a variable called BR that is of type what? Buffered reader. Okay, so we're going to say we want that to be a new buffered reader. So what do you think new does? A new object of a buffered reader object, right? So buffered reader is a class, and it's creating a new object based on that. So you guys should know those cold from C# and Ruby already. Buffered reader. And inside of that, we need a new object called an input stream reader. And the argument for that is we want to read from the system.in instead of system.out. Oh my God, is that painful? All right, so that creates a new input reader. No, because that is taken as an argument into the buffered reader, so it's stored inside the buffered reader class. So now all we're going to work with on is this BR. Now, as I added those, notice what it did to the top. It added, just like C#, you need to import packages or libraries of additional code. And since I implicitly said I wanted a new input stream reader, it went out to the java.io.inputStreamReader class, and it imported that class. So in Ruby, that would be the same thing as doing a require of the input reader, stream reader class, right? You're including the library of code that implements that class. So it automatically input those for me. All right, but that's not all. If we're going to use a buffered reader, we have to use a try-catch. So we're going to use a try, and we're going to say some variable. We're going to say user input equals BR dot, and we're going to use one of the methods in the buffered reader class, and we're going to use a method called readLine, which is here. And we want to read everything on the line until they hit enter, is what that's going to do. So whatever I type is going to be put into user input as a string. So what's wrong with this? Why does this say cannot resolve symbol user input? What's the problem with that? I have to declare it first. Oh my God, I got to declare it. So it's a string. So I declare it as a string, user input, and I'm going to define it here as a null so that it has nothing in it to start with. That's important. So we try we try a little, and then we catch if there's an error. And we're going to catch the errors, an I/O exception error. And we'll call it IOE, just because that's interesting. And our I/O exception, let's print something out to the console system. How do we do that again? System.out.println, and we'll print something like I/O error trying to read. And we need to, if we get an error like that, we need to quit. So we're going to use a system.exit with an error code. That's what that does. So now all that to get text from this, from the user, all right, from the keyboard, from the console area. Now, why doesn't it like my, there we go. So it didn't automatically import mine. So what happened was on this line it came up with, well, now it's not. Came up with a little drop-down error. And now it's not, well, I'm going to redo it then. It imported, the class, oh, what happened to it? There we go. That's what I wanted. If you have an error like this, this little light bulb comes up, and we say, okay, import the class. We want to import the I/O exception class. So that automatically added this line at the top for me, if you still have that red. All right. Are we happy now? So let's try that, and let's just print out what the user printed in, right? So how would I print out what the user just typed? System.out.println what? Very good. User input, semicolon at the end. I should be able to run this now. And it's waiting, a lot like Ruby, etc. It's waiting down here for input. Notice it didn't quit. So I need to click down here, and I can type in, this is a test. When I hit enter, all of that, whatever I type, the space all the way through the end of line, gets added to my string, user input, and then I printed it out again. Isn't that cool? Painful, nay? Any questions on that? All right, we're about out of time. I was going to continue on, and we'll write a method tomorrow to get a variable and print multiple characters to the screen, which is what your assignment's going to be looking like, drawing the triangles. Big chunk of code, isn't it? I mean, I could do that in like 3 lines in Ruby. It's just painful. I don't like Java at all. But suck it up. Oh, this? Yeah, you could. We could make that into our own private method. Yeah. Sure, you could do that. All right, any other questions? So play around with that. Play around. The language should be very easy to use since you've already had C# and Ruby and JavaScript. The language structure is going to be very similar. Okay, so the control structures, expressions, all that kind of stuff. Maybe. Not for this one. Not for the first assignment, no. But you do have to ask the user for how big you want your triangle. So.
That's not as bad as
yeah, writing a menu in here is going to be a little painful. Yeah, context. All right. So that's good enough.